Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Patrick Crouch from the Carlton Footy Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Max Gorn, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hello, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well. Number 41 in my 50 most relevant players for fantasy footy in 2025 is Western Bulldog Adam Treloar. It was a player that during the 2024 season was a unique separator that was delivering captaincy territory numbers most weeks and might have just been that unique pick that separated you from the pack and set you up for a brilliant year. But there's no love for him in the 2025 preseason. And so we're putting some respect on his name. He's in the 50 most relevant. We've got to have a talk about Adam Treloar. Joining me on this podcast is a fellow friend of the Coaches Panel. He's been part of this now for a number of seasons. Mate, MiniMonk, good to have you back on the podcast. Talking about a guy that I don't think I've heard his name mentioned anywhere, let alone seen him in a team reveal. And yet you look through some of the data trends of 2024. This was an incredible season from Adam Treloar.
It was. I'm on, and it's not a docker this time. How's that? He had a fantastic 2024. I don't think it can be understated how good he was. He was arguably the best midfielder fantasy premium for the year, but he doesn't get the love. You know, as you say, people like to look at the likes of Tom Green and Marcus Bontempelli, Zach Butters, and his name is nowhere to be seen. I'm exactly the same with you. All over Twitter, all over Facebook, all over anywhere people look for their fantasy content, his name is nowhere to be seen. People don't want to pay that price tag with him. And there's a narrative as to why people tend to say that. But that narrative might not necessarily be as true as what people think it is.
I think that is a fair call. Midfielder again. The only player that is midfield eligible in AFL Fantasy that hit that 110 marker for us last year. While it's a seasonal average of 116.6 in SuperCoach, it's because of those two high-performing years that you're spending over the 100K marker for him in SuperCoach and over $1.1 million in Fantasy and Dream Team. But it's because a brilliant year, 22 games and a season high score of 153 against the Tigers in SuperCoach. A little bit under what his career high is, though. Just a few seasons earlier, it was 177 against the Gold Coast Suns in SuperCoach. While it's a 154 in that Tigers match that I alluded to for his season high score in SuperCoach, he also gave that to us in fantasy with a 154. And just the 5 points higher is his career high score. That was back a decade earlier against the Demons. It was a 159. Look, last year, he's ranked in the league first for disposals, third for uncontested possession, so an ability to get into space and to get the ball, fourth for effective disposal. So much had been made of Adam Treloar's wasteful disposal across big chunks of his career. 2024, that was not the case. And then you add this guy that's getting so much ball on the outside, so much ball effectively using it. He's 10th in the league for stoppage clearances. So this is not just some outside transition scorer. He's getting it done in and under at the cold face, helping his team get and surge the ball through. Vinny, this year's phenomenal. 110 average in fantasy from 22 games, 14 tons, 6 of them over 120, 137, a 149, a 154, and importantly, nothing under 80. He's ranked 12th overall for points, and that's with missing a game. So guys like Dacos, Brayshaw, Sarong all played every game last year. He still outscored them with one less game. He's the number one mid by average and 7th overall for average as well. In SuperCoach, a career high year with that 116.6 average, 16 tons, 11 over 120, 6 over 140. So now's your gravy coming on your captaincy scores, including, by the way, 3 consecutive weeks where he knocks out one. He's back to back to back between round 19 to 21. And really, just 2 sub-scores under 90 all year, and really only one of them is worth even highlighting. The other is just fine. Every premium gives us a low score, but again, in SuperCoach, 13th for total points, ahead of Brayshaw, Cripps, Green, Goulden, all played the extra game than him. He still outperformed those popular premium names inside the top 11 for averages, top 5 for mids. I'm out of breath, Mini. Like, that's just an outstanding year and zero love when you think that he's only really missed a handful of games in his 3 years as a Western Bulldog. I know there's the injury concern, but he only missed the one game last year and 5 in the last 3. It's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be.
You know that one game he missed as well? He was named. He was doing his pre-game warm-up and they pulled him out 15 minutes before the game was due to start. So he was pretty darn close to playing all games last year too, which would have been a staggering feat for someone of Adam Treloar's injury history, as people like to point out. You know, we just have visuals of his head in our head of his injuries because he did the double silly salmon where he did both of his strings in the same incident. We just feel like he's an injury-prone player. But since he really burst onto the scene in 2012, he's played 20-plus games in a season more often than not. There's only really the 4 seasons where he hasn't, or 5 seasons where he hasn't, and one of them he still played 19 games. Like, he's only missed a couple. And, you know, you're talking about that injury, the scoring floor. You know what was missed in that one game where he scored under 80 in SuperCoach? He was tagged. He got tagged in that game by Will Phillips against North Melbourne. If you know, as people like to do, exclude that game out from it, that goes from being about a 116 to a 119 average in SuperCoach. And it was also one of his only few games in AFL Fantasy where he scored in the 80s. He got through into the 80s with a hard tag as well. To me, that's someone that's definitely worth considering. You know, if he is able to perform at a 110 marker as a midfielder, that puts you in the Uber category. Because if you can back it up, you only actually have to back up that 110 marker. Once you start scoring that highly, you don't have to exceed your price tag. It is enough to just maintain it. And because of that floor that he had, because of that ceiling that he had, and that consistency that he had, he is definitely someone who can maintain a 110 AFL fantasy average and a 116 average in SuperCoach as well.
The 110 plus average before he's done in AFL fantasy, by the way, we look at that and go, oh, he just got there. Well, early days at Collingwood, in fact, across all the formats between 2014 to 2019, he turns up every year across every format. And so somehow we've allowed this, I think, a false narrative that got confirmation bias when he missed a month in 2023 to make us go, he's injury prone, therefore I want nothing to do with it. But he's shown that when he's fit, he pushes that 110 marker across the formats, and he's tightened up his ball use and how clean he is as a ball user as he's got to the Bulldogs, which has you kind of thinking, well, maybe it was more the way he was needing to play at the Magpies and the protection of such a strong, skillful user around him like a Bontempelli through the midfield. That, yes, as he's got to 32 at the start of this new season, he's still got some upside. Like, I look at the market share last year of the Western Bulldogs, and he's the club leader with a 6.9%, which isn't outlandish, by the way. When you look through some of the other clubs, it's not uncommon to see people in the 7+ markers for market share. He's only one of 3 guys at the Dogs last year that gets over 6%, whereas the year prior, Treloar's at a 6.7. So he's not grown a lot in his market share. It's 0.2. And Bontempelli and English were 7.5 and 7.6 in 2023. They're now under that 6.9 marker. So he's getting so much of the ball. He's using it well. He's getting into space. He's winning clearances. On the rare abnormality that he gets the tag over Bont, which still is baffling to me that anybody would choose to do that, he's still delivering high ceiling games, low floor, not getting crazy amount of the market share. And yet we want these unique separators in our team. And here with Treloar, it is coming at a price point without any doubt, and we do need to talk about that. But he is giving you captaincy scoring, high floor, unique ownership. Like, if you're looking for something to separate you from the pack, you don't have to go weird hunting in the 3K range in fantasy or the 600K range in fantasy and dream team. You got it here in a captain option in Treloar.
Exactly. I mean, when we start to talk about those uber premium type players, what are you looking for? You're looking for 30 plus disposals a game and a combined 10 marks tackles, and goals a game, roughly. And he is achieving that. And it's not like he's over exceeding in one of those particular stats, you know? It's about 15 kicks, about 15 handballs, about 5 marks or 4.5 marks, about 4.5 tackles, and just under a goal a game. It's such an even spread. There's nowhere you can really point a bullet into him. So people start to say, well, he's injury prone. That's where I'm going to write him off with. But as we just explained, that's not really a narrative that we can tend to push. Maybe age is something you can start to push. You say,
Sure.
well, he's pushing 32, players will start to slow down. But he's got good support beside him. You know, Treloar is supported by Liberatore, probably one of the best contested players in the game still at his old age as well. And Bontempelli, arguably the most unlucky player to not have a Brownlow at the moment because of how good he is. You're talking about a midfield trio that's uber elite. And then you've also got a pretty darn good ruckman in Tim English supporting them as well. He's going to get enough of the pill. He's going to get people giving him the ball. He's going to be able to give the ball to people with a high degree of accuracy, which we've seen from his disposal efficiency. That's why he spiked in SuperCoach and went to that 117 marker. There's just not really much that you can point at and say, this is a reason why I don't want to start the guy, other than I don't vibe with him. I've been burnt by him in the past. I don't want to go there again. And to me, if you're saying that at this point of the preseason, you know, you're probably ruling him out for round 1 now, then you're probably ruling him out as a trade-in option as well, because 5 rounds into the season, he's just as likely to get injured as he is at the start of the season. But then you're going to have to burn 2 trades to get him in and then get him out again. You'll cop the price loss associated with that, and it will hurt a hell of a lot more if the week that you bring him in, he gets injured. So why don't you just suck it up and start him? It's definitely a consideration for a lot of coaches.
Why are you ruling out the number 1 averaging midfielder in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team and a top 5 averaging midfielder in SuperCoach? Because of his max price, his injury risk. Well, isn't Max gone in that phase 2?
But it's not even his...
Sorry.
But it's not even his max price. He's been priced higher in AFL Fantasy. This isn't even his career year.
Correct.
He's done 113.5.
Yeah.
So if you think that he can repeat that is his value.
Yeah. We go through this bizarre arguments we're happy to have in one line to mean we rule a player in or out of our starting squad or our trading options. We've got these weird rules that exist in certain lines and not in others. You know, to come back to Rucks, for example, I'm happy to pick Gawn, Cherry, Marshall, because I go, look, they're probably at max price, quote unquote, but I'm paying for him to be my captain, and I'm paying so I don't have to worry about getting into the trade during the year. Well, couldn't you hold that same argument for Treloar? Yes, he's not value, but he's my captain, vice captain most weeks. I'm paying for what I'm expecting for him to be, and I'm paying to not have to think about the trade in later in the season. So I find it fascinating how we have this line of argument that as a community we go, oh, it's for rucks, it's fine. We go to the midfielder and go, but you can't do that with a premium mid.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
We're going to have so much value in the rest of our squad. You talk about the value options that people are looking at in the forward line, which is looking, as quite often it does at this stage of the year, fairly vanilla.
Yeah.
There's a lot of value options there. There's value options that people are looking at inside of the rucks. There's a lot of value options down back. We've got some pretty sustainable midfield rookies that we're thinking these guys might give us what we need in terms of cash generation. You're going to have to spend the cash somewhere. You know, you don't want to walk into round 1 with $1 million in the bank and say, I'll use that next week once I've identified who the players are. That's just leaving 100 points off of your score. You know, every dollar can count. Every dollar makes a difference in terms of maximizing your score come round 1. And the difference between 100 points at the end of the season can be the difference between a top 100 finish and finishing outside the top 200. And with someone like Treloar, in those early rounds, it's not just someone that you can get one of his score off. You're looking for these captaincy type options. You're probably looking to go to a safe captain if your vice captaincy fails. We've just talked about how good his floor was. If you want someone that can give you 100 and be like, my VC hasn't quite gone as well as I expected. I've got a player that's coming into a reasonable matchup. He can score me 100. I'll take it to the bank. He's a player that can fit that bill.
2 of the first 3 games from once the season starts, Treloar's got a Friday night matchup. So there's your VC right there. And that the other one that is not a Friday night is a Saturday night against North Melbourne. Yes, that was the team that tagged him. But again, are you really going to tag Adam Treloar and let a Marcus Bontempelli roam free? That really doesn't sit great for anyone other than Bulldogs fans and Bontempelli owners. Other than that, everyone's nervous.
Yeah. Are you going to tag in round 1? You know, it's a rarity that teams actually do put a tag out in round 1 of the season. It tends to be a second half of the season.
I think to bring some balance, because we're running real fast on the train tracks express of pick Adam Treloar and deliberately doing that, by the way, to not be hyperbolic in nature, but to try to put some respect, feels too strong a term, but to put some love on a guy that was so good for us last year that is being ignored in the community. We need to correct that, which is certainly why we poured on a little extra squirt of tomato sauce here, just to make sure that it is obvious and seen for what Treloar can be. I think the elements are, though, everything worked for him last year. While the injury history, I don't think you can put a heavy weight on it alone. It does have something as a factor. Not defining, but it's a factor to consider. He could not have done any better ball use that year. Historically, he's been good, but not this level of good. He got so much ball that went through, in and around him, and so much of that Bulldogs team just allowed the core 4 mids to do it. Does a Riley Sanders get some opportunities now as they realise some of these aging 30-plus midfielders are coming to the end? And Matt Kennedy has come into the side, and while probably going to play the same sort of function he did at the Blues, which is I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere, and I'll wait for an injury to get a fair split in the midfield. When you take all these career high elements into consideration, you start to load what we talked about with Luke Ryan the other day. The risk profile of the top-end premium just marginally moves a little bit. And when you're spending the 1.1 mil in fantasy and the near 630K in SuperCoach, you need surety and confidence that what you saw last year, it'll be just play on, if not improvement, into 2025. And if you're not certain of those two things, that's where starting him more than the injury risk becomes a reason to ignore. The fixture early is nice in terms of where he plays in the round, but in terms of matchups, it's not as good as it does get during the middle portion of the season.
That's exactly it. And, you know, we talked about it with Ryan as well. You don't start him, you might want to trade into him at some point, unless you are concerned about that injury narrative. So what you need to see if you want to start him is, does he have an uninterrupted preseason? Is the midfield mix of the Dolphins going to be looking exactly the same? Does he look like he's playing the exact same role? You know, is he going to get 30 touches a game, 4.5 tackles, 4.5 marks, maybe contribute a goal or two? If those all say the same, then he should be scoring exactly the same. If there's a bit of regression because of age or because they're trying to get someone else into the mix, trying to see what they can do, trying to add some explosivity rather than just the tried and tested, that might see 3 or 4 points per game of regression into him. You know, it's one mark, it's a couple of can balls, it's losing a tackle, losing a kick. It doesn't take much to lose that little bit that you need. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be in and around the mark. And so you've got to look for, if I'm not starting him, when am I jumping on? And I think we've had a look at it, and I think we both agree there is a very, very gravy point to be jumping onto him.
You've almost got two on
so
board.
If you look at
you've got two options, really, don't you?
You do.
Talk us through them.
So if you look at his fixture run, before the bye, you know, you come into around about round 9, you've got the Gold Coast Suns up at TIO, bit of sloppy, could get a few more tackles, but it's a nice onboarding point. You could maybe wait the week because he has Port Adelaide the week before and they're quite restricted. And then the week after that, he goes Essendon, Geelong, which are great fixtures, by the way, has the bye in round 12. A little bit scary because of that. You typically don't want to be trading into bye players around then, but we've got the 5 weeks of buys. It's just, it makes it a little bit more palatable. And then after that, you've got Hawthorn, St Kilda, Richmond, the Swans, North Melbourne, and even Adelaide in round 18 as well. Those are some very nice fixtures for an inside midfielder to be coming into. And if you think you can be getting at his bottom price around that time of the year, when the magic number is at its highest, potentially he's dropped an 80 score in AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach, so he's at that, 550, 560 marker in SuperCoach, maybe mid to high 900s in AFL Fantasy, it's pretty juicy to be able to jump onto it. So you got those 2 options. Either you jump on for those 2 games before his bye, or you say, here's my round 13 bye upgrade target, and you just go for him then. I think both of those options are fantastic jump on points.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. To me, there's enough outside of the injuries. It's the other elements I want to see, watch, and observe. What is the market share? What does this midfield makeup look like? I want these data points to become evident. I think they had a pretty tight midfield last year of Bont, Libba, Treloar, and Richards. If that marginally opens up just fractionally, 2 or 3% each way for a Sanders, a Kennedy, or anybody else that might come into this mix, all of a sudden I'm not as keen. I want to see and get the data point first. For me, that is my reason. I'm more of the, I'd like to upgrade into Treloar. The injuries are not a factor for me. It's I want to see this makeup of the midfield and the split of points over the first 2 months of the year. Once I have that information, I'll be much happier to jump in at those 2 on-ramps that Mini has pointed out are the great times to do it. And to me, if the elements are there, I'll be absolutely looking to trade into an Adam Treloar during the season. Draft, though, is interesting for us, Mini, because again, with that injury, misinformation's not fair because he did miss a game last year for the year before. So it's not fair, but 5 games in 3 years at the Doggies, he's an M1, undoubtedly, but he's not a first-round pick, though. For most people. Would you say that's true?
Maybe. He'd be a great guy where if you get him at the end of the first round and you can back him up with another good 105, 110 midfielder. Say you back him up with someone like a Connor Rosie or a Zach Butters or an Andrew Brayshaw. These sorts of players that you say, right, well, I'm taking a bit of a riskier M1 because I think they can go 110. But I've got another one there just in case. Or you draft one deep with your midfields come the back end of the draft. I think it could still be a first rounder.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think a lot of other people might discount the fact of how good he is. A lot of other coaches might say, you know what, I don't like his injury history. He might slide a little bit. If you can get him in the middle of the second round, like let's say you're a pick 5, you get him back on the second round, you're probably laughing because at that point, he is definitely representing value for just how good he can be.
Imagine that, being able to pair him with a player like that would be available on draft day in that range. One of the premium rucks you might have grabbed, a Harry Sheasel you might have been able to get there, a Dacos, a Bontempelli, a Butters in a SuperCoach or a Merit in Fantasy. To be able to pair Treloar with one of those guys, if you're sitting in that middle portion of the first round and then into the second, you're liking how your draft day has started on the Keeper platform. That is for sure. Hey, Mini, as always, a pleasure talking fantasy footy with you. We'll have you back on in a few days, helping us work our way through the 50 most relevant for 2025.
Yeah, it would be good to be back on again. The question is, will the next player be a Freo player or not a Freo player? That's for you to find out.
I don't even need to do my little game at the end for who's at number 40. I'll just be like, MiniMonk's back on. He's actually not tomorrow, by the way, but MiniMonk's back on. Is it a docker or not? Call now. Yeah, well, we won't do that. Hey, if you want to go back and check out any of the other players of the 50, we got you covered on this channel. You can go back and check them out. From 41 all the way back to 50, wherever you're listening or watching to this, you can check it out. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do so and comment below. What do you think Adam Treloar will average for us in 25? And in AFL Fantasy, is it going to be positive? Is SuperCoach going to be better? That's what I'd love your comments on. If you want to join our Patreon supporter group, there is a tier that is right for you. Every tier has a bunch of different tier rewards, but our breakout and premium tier rewards, they get these podcasts included a day earlier. And one of the brand new premium Patreons is Rowan, has just jumped on board. Made a massive thank you from the whole team here at the Coaches Panel for you for jumping on board at that premium level. If you'd like to join Rowan and become a Patreon at any level, let alone the premium tier that he has jumped in on, all the details are in the description of this episode. Tomorrow, we're departing the feast. We say farewell to the feast with the number 40. And we often say here at the Coaches Panel, injuries create opportunities. And they do. But they're not the only things that create opportunities. Moving clubs, that creates an opportunity for a player. And we're talking about a player who moved clubs during the 2024 trade period. This guy has moved for a greater opportunity, for a greater responsibility. And when he gets it, he's pretty confident that he can put in some big numbers. And I might just be of the same belief. Who's this guy that's moved clubs to get a little bit more opportunity, a little bit more responsibility, maybe a little bit more money on the contract as well? You'll find out tomorrow in the 50 Most Relevant.